In today's gospel, Jesus establishes the papacy and designates Peter as the first pope. What a gift this is to us and to the church. Jesus says, "You are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church." Now, to fully understand even the depth of this, let's zoom back to the Old Testament reading from Isaiah. Now, at that time, the king's steward was not doing a good job, and God wanted to replace him. So he designates Eliakim as the new steward. And Eliakim's authority is symbolized because he has the key of the house of David. And God continues, "When he opens, no one shall shut. When he shuts, no one shall open." So Eliakim's authority to take care of the people of the kingdom is established and symbolized by having the key of the house of David. And this authority, again, Isaiah is naming this directly from God. So now we come back to the gospel and we see a similar situation, right? The Lord Jesus designates Peter as the foundation of the church. "You are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church." And he will give him the keys to the kingdom of heaven. So we see again the keys, the symbol of authority. And Jesus continues, "Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Very similar to what Eliakim had in the Old Testament reading. You know, there's another big indication of Peter's authority in that Jesus changes his name from Simon to Cephas. The Lord spoke Aramaic, and Kepha means rock in Aramaic, which is translated to Petros in Greek. So from Petros comes Peter. Sometimes he's referred to as in the scriptures as Cephas, which comes from the Aramaic Kepha. And whenever God changes the name of someone, that means they have a new role, something special. In the Old Testament, Jacob his name was changed to Israel. And in the New Testament, Saul, who was persecuting the church, was changed to Paul, who was an apostle for the church. You know, and even the setting where the gospel reading took place speaks to us, because I'm told that Caesarea Philippi, there's a great big rock. So Jesus is making a visual point: "Upon this rock I will build my church." From Peter, there has been an unbroken line of popes for 2,000 years. That's extraordinary in the history of the world, right? Unique. There have been at a few times 2 or even 3 men claiming to be pope, but over time those have shown to be, invalid, and they're now referred to as anti-popes. So we've had an unbroken line of true popes from history. Now, what kind of authority does the Pope have? We say that he's infallible. And what that means is when he makes a solemn declaration on the subject of faith and morals, he cannot err. He cannot be wrong. This type of declaration is called an ex cathedra statement. Ex cathedra meaning from the chair of Peter. And it's rarely done. The most recent case was in 1950 when Pope Pius XII defined the dogma of the Assumption, which we just celebrated this past week. Now, usually when popes make an ex cathedra statement, it's in the context of an ecumenical council, a council of all the world's bishops. The Assumption was an exception. But the thing that's not an exception is they're not naming something completely out of the air, brand new. It's something out of what we call the deposit of faith, something that the church has believed from the beginning, but for whatever reason needs to be clarified. Okay, so that's kind of a misconception, I think, that some people have, that it's not naming something new, but something clarified. And in the history of the church, not one of these statements has ever been contradicted. That's more evidence of Jesus' promise that the gates of the netherworld shall not prevail against it. Error will not creep into an official teaching of the church. Now, another thing that confuses people is that items of discipline can change. A lot of people, I think, were confused when the church used to say, well, you can't eat meat on Fridays. And now they say, well, that prohibition was lifted. Well, that's just a matter of custom or discipline. What underlies that no meat on Fridays is a recognition that that was the day the Lord died. And it's a good idea to do penance on that day. And in fact, what has not changed is that the bishops still ask that we do some type of penance on Friday, and skipping meat is actually still recommended. It's just not required. But that type of thing, again, is custom or discipline. It's not part of an official dogma that would be defined ex cathedra. Another thing to note is that the Pope and the bishops are not impeccable. That means they're not without sin. They are human beings. They're sinners like you and me. And finally, it's particularly with the current Pope Francis, when they speak on anything else, any other type of statement, which is not an ex cathedra statement, they can be wrong. Okay, they're not experts in the environment or social issues or science or anything. So, we see that sometimes, unfortunately, with Francis in a news conference or something, he'll make a statement and we think, well, what does he mean by that? And he doesn't clarify it. Well, that's his personal opinion, and it may be right, may be wrong, but it's not covered by the teaching of infallibility. So keep in mind that by following the church's teaching, we will not go astray. And the catechism is a good guide to that teaching. Every word in the catechism is not infallible, but it is a good presentation of, again, that doctrine, that deposit of faith that we've received from the beginning from the apostles. And don't be discouraged by the failings of fellow Catholics or bishops or the Pope, because they're sinners too, just like us. And they're not infallible. Only in the very rare instance when the Pope speaks ex cathedra is he infallible. So when we see things that we don't like, let's just have mercy on those people, just like we want God to have mercy on us.